Yeah, this is super funny actually. I went back and forth many times in my head before I just because it's on the same topic that I've been talking about many times before, and it's the general culture of well, you should say the internet, social media. I always think, and I think it's a good reminder to remind yourself that everything you see there, it's tons of information, tons of on any platform or website, and most people don't contribute that much at all. And contribute, it depends on, you can see it as contribution or as what's the word, contamination basically, but some things are just shit basically, it's just noise, and that's always the case with information in general when it comes to knowledge. What the most valuable knowledge to double down on and ingrain in your brain, so you use that information, not just exposing for it but actually using it. And so we're living in very interesting times, but because I think I mentioned this in an earlier video that we're on the threshold of sort of what you perhaps share or what you. I think it's something that's about to change. And one way I thought about it earlier was that, so we just take the podcasts that are among the most famous, I mean, sort of Joe Rogan Experience, for example, but also like the Swedish podcasts, like hours. I'm in Sweden, that's why I mention it. Just hours of people just talking, and it's sort of going from this sort of hardcore production, like to, and this is especially interesting for me, who's in the sort of marketing for a long time, been in marketing space and learned there, and been interesting probably for many years. And so to see how that, because that's also still in sort of the production thought, which I think it's always sort of necessary to a degree, because I mean a good example is I had a video from a guy talking about a Swedish guy talking about that. Okay, it's like this feels sort of production for me. I wanted to make it. Which is basically what it is. Yes, of course you care about your, like for example, that's as I've been going over and over in some of these videos, because since I've used many of these videos for a long time as sort of a tool for myself, and then I just switched it to figure out that I perhaps to just post everything, someone might need it, self-reflections and stuff, and then I still wanted to use it as that, but the only reason I could do that with the old one was because I felt so distant to them. I don't care, even feeling embarrassed of the extreme sloppiness of my appearance. And so the most challenging was when I get back to the sort of super sloppy style, and then sort of thought I'll never publish this, and then actually did it anyway. And so it's an interesting thing that's, I think it's in general is happening in sort of the everywhere on the internet. It's a performance, but it's still sort of more and more material, and you're sort of, especially if you're using it more, it's a very interesting topic. And for myself, I'm just using it as sort of an mad scientist experiment house, or just, and it's a cool balance since I'm not sort of, I don't have not in the position to be super mega sort of careful with the sort of a reputation that I've gained, even though I don't think it's, I mean, you have to do something really crazy to destroy your reputation, but it's still like I don't have enormous amount to lose, so I can deal with sort of if something would be sort of totally out of the ordinary, so to speak. But yeah, so I think it's an interesting question, because it's also like it's not something that's intuitive for us, since the internet is a new space for, I mean, anyone, billions of people can see it, and so, and it's so it's obvious not the case that you can sort of share anything and just be, I mean, we all have private space, but it's still sort of an interesting milieu and environment, something that's developing and going into new directions. And again, on the performance stuff, like since I'm in the marketing thing, I've been so launching a business and going on the marketing side of it, actually going back to something I was sort of deranged, or sort of derailed to something else, and then I went back to the marketing focus again, and really start to think about what it means, because of course it's because in marketing it's really sort of super sharp. You really it has to be performance. I mean, you really have to production for some like sort of, it's understandable that the old sort of TV commercials have something that's something extra, but the tricky thing, as it's always been sort of like in anything, really, if it's marketing or, but it is sort of, how should you put it? It's a balance of sort, but it's also sort of navigating both the sort of primitive sort of attention thing with the genuine communication of actually delivering something of value. So and not just only the, how should you put it, short-term attention, because if you only go on that, people's reaction will be like, hey, well, I know what you're doing, you just wanted attention, but what's the value for me? So it's yeah, it's an interesting topic, and it's an interesting space, and just in the general, and it's sort of tied together in the same way we got this whole discussion of marketing as well. We all walk around with our own sort of marketing image in a sense. We portray ourselves in some ways. We care about our appearance, not just the visual, but the sort of, we care. We care what other people, the impression people get from us. Of course we do, and we should care about that. But hopefully not just care about this sort of outside. This should be reflected of something that's genuine, of course. Hopefully. But it's then the flip side of that is we all use tools for enhance or what should you put it, control our self-image. Of course we do. And so like being super, how should you put it, transparent, or super should you put it, it's not, I mean, depends on what you mean. It's like, of course you can sort of be, we all know that we do it, and it's not something that feels sort of ethically bad of doing, like portraying a good, I mean, everyone who goes to a place or something, like just take someone, like you go on the first date with someone that you really want a genuine good connection with, and like few women would go to that date without makeup, even though they know they, and for it's the same thing for the men, of course. You won't put up with, or you won't like put on your most sort of ugly bad clothes. It's like, it's, everyone gets it, it's obvious, but it's still like, yeah. So that's something that's on my mind, and so I think it's it's an interesting topic. What's happening in this world, and what's trends, what's in the long term, and I've been thinking about this for many years when it comes to sort of interaction, and in the worst case substitute for genuine interaction. I mean, it's one thing to be addicted to the phone and stuff, but addicted to faces, people, and so there is an argument for being sort of stuck and just following someone else's life and just never living your own. But on the other hand, it's also the best tool you basically can. You can basically, I mean, the monopoly for knowledge from the sort of universities is not the exact same as it has been. It's always, you could always buy books, and the environment in itself is reinforcing, so it's quite hard to think you can just but with video on sort of YouTube and stuff, you can sort of you don't even have to buy the, even though I think it's a good thing to buy the book because it's nice to have something physical and you can go in depth. Should we do both? But if the most top person in area, scientist or anything, buying the book versus watching the video, like the 3-hour conversation perhaps with the person. Sometimes I would even say I would prefer, I mean, it depends on how deep I'm going to go into the topic. Maybe I prefer the book because I will get more details, but it's much more sort of, it's much, you get sort of a, I just think it's something, and it's not just me, I think it's probably scientifically sort of backs up the theory that you will get more from someone communicating with visuals and you hear the language instead of just reading it. And this is not sort of criticism of reading, of course, but of course there's a stronger signal. Where were I? It's an interesting world that we live in. It is. What was it that I said I've been thinking about for something for years? Forget what it was that the if it's a substitute for that's a danger if it becomes a substitute for sort of, because I actually think there is a danger it becomes a substitute for genuine interaction, human communication. So especially when it is so I think it's two things, like if it's a distraction from, if it's a bad distraction or not really not that constructive, just follow someone because it's a cool person but it's not a good example in life, then it's definitely bad. If it's the substitute becomes someone who's really sort of admirable and good, then it's not that easy to say. I mean, and that's something that I've been sort of challenged in. I mean, people mold their brains by other human beings. That's how we work. So if I can get the top person in the world in some area and just overload my brain with that person's knowledge from the internet or books, I know how much I will learn from it, how extremely beneficial it will be for me. And sort of my long-term neural programming, as it is. The brain is basically sort of input, and that determines the output. And so I get when we're deep into that rabbit hole, and I mean, I'm so thankful for what I did, but I went quite far. I mean, you can really use a lot of time on the internet, so really it's important to sort of check yourself. But on total, I think that part is definitely something that immensely good for the world. But I'm a bit more worried for, even though I'm careful for myself, but I'm even more worried for people who just don't have the same control of their attention and just indulge in internet stuff. I mean, I think of myself extremely controlled most of the time, and I know that I'm still sort of victim of just sometimes just throw away some time. Not when it's serious, of course, but I mean, um, it can happen to me, even me. So I think then I think about all people who are perhaps not that self-control and never even, perhaps not even have a sort of a guide in, or it's a general thought of that life is about self-improvement, or you want to contribute with as much more knowledge and wisdom in order to take good decision for your own life and contribution for the world and the economy. I mean, those who don't sort of have that map space in their brain, they just don't even have a reason for not being addicted to it. And when someone says, well, you should not be addicted to it, and just they don't really know why, because when they don't, they just, I mean, probably too deep into it, so that when they put it away, the phone, or they don't even know how to socialize anymore. I mean, I wonder how many of these school shootings would have happened if it wasn't for the internet. I don't know. It's just a guess. Maybe there's no correlation. That's not my area of expertise, so to speak. But I guess that it can be a quite contributing factor. But that's an old discussion. It feels like now about the danger of the internet and social media and all that stuff. I remember when I could sort of understand what young people go through today with social media, even though I don't know. I did not hope for discussing this. Maybe I can jack it into all the previous discussion later on, but because that's really more interesting. But I just continuing on this thread with sort of young people. I mean, just one researcher I really respect, really a person who's really admirable in his sort of bridging sort of the gap between, I would say, really political extremes, because he's sort of an approach that could appeal to both, and I always admired that trait, to be sort of not dogmatically sort of. So many people feel like putting people in categories, and you're just like, especially when it comes to politics, that's so contaminated of just. And I don't say this even as sort of. Well, it's really hard, because I guess it's many instincts and brain regions in the brain sort of going to the extreme when you're trying to. I think this is a extremely complicated discussion to go into politics and the human brain, and how we react to that, and why we react the way we do. And I mean, but because I can't, I won't go into it. But those people who can sort of keep their distance in their argument when it comes to those type of extremes are really admirable. And I think it's rare. But I also think that most of those people that I've sort of found to be very knowledgeable and talented in general usually have a quite big, if not a good, or at least sort of a good level of that sort of. I just think it's a general. I mean, the brighter you are, you understand that you can just not just be extremely dogmatic. And I say this also as an argument for, like, I mean, some corrections in society, or even if it's sort of politics and things that need to be done, and you realize that this is the right approach. Of course, you're going to be quite irritated if you feel like. If you feel like, for example, this really needs to be done, and you understand that not everyone perhaps don't understand that, and you perhaps even got to blame for having a certain opinion, which goes on and on in both sort of political size and stuff. Of course, it's understandable, and of course, it's understandable with the rhetorics necessary to get elected for different things. I mean, it's, even though I always find it, well, the thing about never thought I would be this deep, but anyway, what was it that Plato criticized on the reason and never believed in democracy? Even though I still think it's probably true that it's the least bad of alternatives, but he said it because it always in the end just leads to demagogues getting the election votes, and so you could say that either as a criticism of all the, if you choose to label them demagogues, or you could say that as some sort of understanding that, yeah, I get it. Of course you have to do like that, because otherwise you won't be able to achieve what you think is good for the world. So easy to be too judgy also, but there's no the threads here, but yeah, totally blank now. Forgot why did I, yeah, Jonathan Haidt, that's the thing. He's really, I mean, just really those who can really think about this happened to be like, I know he, for example, I've discussed politics, for example, really portrayed a good example of how you can yourself understand those who have an opposite political view, which is really fruitful and good thing to have that, spread that knowledge of science. Even though I think the most best is usually if you don't think, I don't think, well, this is in general as a discussion point, not just politics, but whatever topic it is, even if there are all other topics than politics that can be very sensitive. I think is one thing that works terribly well for me is to think that it is, if you think of yourself as having an opinion that you're debating, that's way inferior to thinking of yourself that you have thoughts that you discuss. Because if someone's, or if you have a discussion with someone, well, you have the opinion like this and that, it can be a good thing to correct and say, no, these are my thoughts. I can't be sure of anything. That would be quite arrogant and unintelligent to just say opinions. We bet on things in life. We can't know for sure. If we say we know for sure and we're using rhetorics because maybe that's the only thing to win an election of, for, and you might be 90% sure, but you don't say that because then no one would believe you. So it's rhetoric as well. But when you have a discussion, I mean, I think it's a constructive thing to think about it as thoughts, and so the other people understands how intelligent the person is, if the person is still dogmatic in his or her response to your argument, instead of sort of sharp going to the details of just how do we find the truth together. Maybe naive to think every discussion would work that way, but yeah. And so I see sort of this Jonathan Haidt as that sort of general attitude of not being like, yeah, it's a rare trait, and I find it more common the more intelligent a person is. And so yeah, he have written quite a lot about the dangers of the sort of child exposure to cell phones and stuff. And I'm always been a bit skeptical, but still sort of not sort of super skeptical, but sort of I wonder. I guess it is true. I never delved deep into it, but so going back to, I remember myself, since the iPhone, everyone got an iPhone when I was in 8th grade, I think. perhaps they got an iPhone 3 in 7th grade, 8th grade, don't remember. And I remember we started using Facebook around there, a little earlier perhaps. And I remember it. I mean, remember writing late at night, sort of following stuff, discussion on Facebook, or sort of writing and joking and stuff. So it's sort of it's totally in it. Sort of it's sort of on what's it called and I lost the word at the end. An extra. Yeah, it just prolongs the social environment in school, basically, which would be a good thing, perhaps, but at the same, it's basic. I guess it's not. I don't really know. I think I mean, like, these should be like, if you take the original, I guess it was Mark Zuckerberg thought that when he started it. I mean, just to connect with people. And if that's why I think about it as if, well, why would that even be a bad thing when children is great? They can even be with each other when after school as well. But I guess it comes down to sort of the filters that just lowers, much lower on internet, perhaps for just bullying or stuff. I don't know, but yeah, I feel as if there are many ideas that I've not that pops up into my mind right now, because I'm not been thinking about this for a long time that much when it comes to children. So I don't know. It's probably, but one thing I think is for sure, that is that it can be a substitute for real interaction. That's when it's really bad. When it's a substitute for, yeah, real interaction, even if it doesn't matter if it's kids or if it's and so that's also hard to evaluate as well. If it's, how do you know if it's a substitute? If you don't do it, would that kid actually be with other kids? That's not for sure. And if he or she would not be, would that then be better to just be there, social media and stuff? And it's even harder when you contemplate sort of that. I mean, all the other kids are there. I would be sort of outside, and I guess that's the biggest reason my parents allow that, which can't blame them. So it's sort of, but I started to think about this, if it's, what would be what the right approach to that is. I don't know, but yeah, so but the original thought here about what's happening in general with like, for example, the quality of this video is like super dark. I don't even, and I as I said, it's just a very interesting and fun just experimenting with and just throwing things out there. Because I think it's a really, really good thing, actually. I think it's a bad thing that not more people do it. But it's also like, if you're really going to do something sort of big about it, perhaps you'll have to put more effort into taking these strategic steps to actually make it sort of lift. But I think it's a good thing that it's anyone who think they have something that they could sort of contribute with in knowledge wise. And by the way, I think I should charge for this. I mean, and it's interesting how much, if you don't market it and don't charge for it, and make it sort of visible, there are so many things that you have to sort of package in a way, and suddenly people would pay like, and so that's bitter, but not a bitter, but interesting thing that people usually, and that's a sort of old, now it's like an old school sort of thought that we all know from, well, it's not just marketing, it's basically economics, that the higher the price, the more demand. And so basically you value things in accordance with what you pay for them. And so that's why I say I should charge for this. I have some thought that I would sort of put together some program in the future, but it's not. I'm not embarrassed for my thoughts and my knowledge. So I don't think it's. I think that would actually be suitable, but now I don't think it's not be my highest priority. But it would be something interesting to do. I think more people should do it. I would love to get bombarded with ads about people, as I've been for a very long time, for many years, and it was so life changing for me to get bombarded by certain courses that was invaluable for me in my development and this is development of skills and this perspective and stuff. So it's a bad thing that where's all the bright people bombarding me with great less lecture. I mean, I get that. I get ads from people that want to learn to how to do this and how to do that, but it's usually sort of so technical and skills that are, I mean, like sort of broad high level thinking stuff. And I guess yes, most of that happens at universities still, of course, and it happens in usually those people perhaps can make money better in something else, or they have sort of don't feel it's an ethical thing to do when they're sort of a professor and they think they're doing for the students, and they also go sort of starting a bit, I don't even know, I guess that's legal. I guess it should be legal. I mean, anyone who just would be willing to pay for some extra lectures on something deep, I mean, that's there should be more that type of stuff. And yeah, I think there will be much more of that in the future. And yes, I don't say that I don't get that type of sort of exposure from ads, but it's not being sort of. I think there are many people, or a lot of wisdom and knowledge that could create that type of course and just charge for it and make the lives for other people better by just that simple trade-off that we always use in modern economy, or in economy in general. Money for helping someone in their lives, whether it's food or practical building or thoughts on education. Now, education is, when it comes to formal education, it's not something that you charge for in that way in Europe always, but there's some that happens as well. So yeah, that's should be more of that for sure. yeah, I think what how deep I go to delve into topics today, I'm not super sure for how long I will stand it. But yeah, no, I think actually maybe, I mean, any topic could be explored infinitely, basically, and but yeah, my mind lingers sort of at the sort of personal promotion side of things. Especially when something that slipped through my head that I never mentioned was that we all sort of I sort of mentioned it, I guess, that we all have quite I think one way to say it, because I try to do as I preach, so to speak, or as I propagate or think is very constructive to connect things to as deep of scientific analysis as you can, some scientific models basically as you can, um, especially when it comes to human beings, to biology and evolution. So what I'm thinking about is that we all have sort of this self-promotion instinct based, basically. I mean, marketing is, yeah, that's the business term, but image, or just appearance or how you're perceived, and how you portray yourself, how you market yourself, so to speak, in a non-business context, just sort of in general. That's something I think we've basically been selected for. I'm not saying this is a good thing, but in the same way we're selected for. I mean, as the main reason, one of the main theories of why human beings become so intelligent was the social coordination, coordination, coordination for war. Um, so there are many things that we've been selected for that's not good things. Just to be clear, I'm not saying just because that's selected for doesn't mean it's a good thing. So no, it's not necessarily a good thing that intelligence is good and social is good, but war not is not good. And then this sort of self-promotion thing is probably, yeah, I guess it's, I don't know, bad. It's at least it's because it so shows you that if you're on a certain level and you can enhance your own perception of your level, that's of course a sort of good thing for yourself, at least. As long as you sort of, well, I guess it depends. I mean, if when people would usually find out how bad you are if you're if you can't live up to it, but it's still sort of an, what should you put it, if you're really bad at it, it's not good for you either. So you have to, when it's, yeah, and this comes in, and this goes both to the sort of narcissist discussion that I've had earlier about this sort of one Robert Trivers argument again, that I sort of don't remember how much I sort of added to it and how much it was his original argument he made himself. But they thought that narcissism basically selected for his book is about deception, self-deception, people notice deception among other people, and we're selected for noticing deception, so nobody will be able to trick us. Because if you can trick people, if you're egoistic, so like self-gene argument, if you're egoistic and can get away with it, that's not good for the person who get tricked. And so we were selected for seeing deception. And so, but you don't have to trick someone else with an intent if you believe your own lie, if you believe you're amazing. So that's the narcissist argument for why that's been selected for in evolution. And so, and that's a quite sort of good marketing thing then. Not good in now I happen to be quite deep into marketing sort of thought and sort of psychology, and I've never sort of used these type of arguments, as I think that's basically I mean I'm into sort of bias and not understanding of that, so but go so far as to speak as sort of you should probably sort of tune up your that's never something that I think I guess that's a red line somewhere where you have to but if we were going to be sort of concrete and we actually and have an honest discussion about it, because I'm not afraid of honest discussion when it's come to really difficult topics. There might be some topic that I would avoid, but this is a bit cowardly not to delve into, especially if you have sort of the capacity to actually navigate those type of discussions, which I guess I to some level have then, but not to say that it's easy, but yes, so it is basically self-perception, an image enhancer then, to have those type of traits. And so and you can just take something as appearance, like physical appearance, except for sort of if you just take the face of people, it's like it's just it's a marketing thing, I guess, but it's like hopefully not the only thing you value in people, but it's like that way I said it's like we've been selected for in some way, in the same way that we can sort of market ourselves and sort of how we're perceived and whatever, and we can enhance our appearance. It's like, but it's not an indication of sort of so it's maybe I don't have the mental sharpness to navigate that discussion today in a way, and it can be sensitive and it's also deep, and it's but it's actually something I've been thinking about for a very long time, not for much time, but long ago I sort of started to think about it, because evolution is something that's really been into my brain for a long time, and probably the sort of academic, like I very schooled in Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right hand, Charlie Munger's way of thinking about life and wisdom as being multidisciplinary, and not be sort of blind to all the blind spots in if you don't have a broad education as well, not only sort of specialized but also complement your specialization with and then no, I lost my train of thought. Evolution is, and he's so basically have the basic academic models in your head and just thinking about them daily, using them in strategic decision making, and so evolution is definitely perhaps the most deeply ingrained model that I just naturally happen to use, and I'm very thankful for it. It really, really gives you so much clarity in seeing why people do what they do and stuff, and so, like for example, this discussion I just happened to, it popped up in my head, and which is basically not the way you should do it. One thing I really love about Charlotte Munger, one of his sort of psychological tendency that he talks about, the use it or lose it tendency, pilot testing. But no, I won't explain that because I should charge for that type of information. No, half kidding, half serious. Actually, it's so bright, and you're really, yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Is you're really on sort of a battle with your own mind, your own brain through for all your life, trying to brain misleads you in many types of ways, and not an easy thing to wrestle with. And even the most brightest people, it's the same thing. We're all dumb compared to some standard. So, and I don't know, perhaps the more intelligent you are, the more easily you can see your own shortcomings. I don't know. But I don't know, that's sort of a general, because you could probably see your blessings as well. I don't know. So maybe it's not correlated with intelligence to see your flaws in. I don't know, but that's interesting. There are many sort of, remember some guy sort of close to Einstein who just was extremely bright mathematician and just took his life. I don't know if that's correlated with high intelligence, sort of, but because there are many not so bright people who take their lives. I mean, that happens as well. So, but on the sort of intelligence spectrum, I guess there are fewer people with really high intelligence who find interesting people to speak to. Perhaps it's harder to sort of get stimulated intellectually. I mean, that could be a contributing factor, but I don't know if there's statistics on brighter people being have sort of more mental illness and stuff. I've never heard that, so I can't say if that's actually true. But yeah, okay. So there's been marketing, self sort of image, and we all care about that. And it's also quite interesting if you think about it, sort of in an evolution. Or I don't think we should be. I mean, because it's not a sort of narrow topic really. If you really think about it, which is usually the case when you think about most things, but it's really intertwined into the most basic things that's like really really big important things, like sort of self-perception, all those, or how you how you how you create your own image and how you get perceived and how you care about that. That's extremely sort of connected to sort of the most brutal, harsh realities of biology. It's just it's at almost at the core of natural selection. I mean, it's really easy to just think it's just okay. That was that topic. Now we can do. And yes, of course, it's just a topic among many other topics, but it's actually really really central to understand, and it says itself. We care about it quite much. Most people. No one will be want. We might sort of downplay it, and we make a thing out of not caring about it too much sometimes, and that can be a good thing. And well, we might say that also as an indication, as just as a marketing thing in itself. Oh, I don't care that much to signal that you're confident with yourself. So that's marketing is a thing in yourself. But it might be also be true. I mean, um, but and by the way, it's I just think it's a good thing to go through really shortly. I mean, many people have a sort of an instinct when it comes to sort of biology and evolution and evolutionary psychology that it's sort of a bad topic, or which I think is a really bad idea to think that it's a bad topic is very important topic, but it is sort of sensitive in the sense that we're not identical with each other. But I've gone through this discussion in previous videos about not being too sort of dogmatic on the culture side or on the sort of yeah gene side. Basically, of course genes matters, of course culture matters, and how you mold. It's not nature or nurture, it's not one or the other, and that's both, and both are very important. But yeah, a thought slips through my head. It's sort of what's it called? Philosophical science argument that I won't bother go into. But yeah. So the biology of sort of natural selection of mechanisms for actually portraying yourself in a good way. Um, and I guess also sort of to pick up on good other people who are doing it great. So I might guess it could be a cultural thing. Also, you have a capacity selected from the capacity to pick up on those traits. Maybe I don't know, but yeah, again, I just come back to that thought: how much energy we sort of there's so much. I mean, social rejection is basically the biggest as human beings, we sort of in our deepest heart really dislike that feeling of being rejected. That's extremely sort of as a strong pain in the human sort of psyche is the social rejection part. That's why most people don't want to deal with sales, because it means basically you have to deal with the rejection after rejection after rejection and keep going. And so that whole the whole for the thing with sales is just continuing. It's not the whole thing, but a big part of it. Um, so whether it's just a team, I mean, no one would like to be the person who when it goes to a group of people and you start chatting and then you realize that they're not really appreciating that you joined. And some people can take that better, some worse, and some people are better or worse at not being afraid before they go into it. And I don't know, I guess it's more common to feel the sort of hesitation of throwing you into something that could be rejection. I don't know about the second part, how people, like for me, for example, I, as anyone else, can feel this sort of social rejection. I mean, everyone feels it. It's not comfortable to anticipate that it's going to happen and throw it into it anyways. But the second part, to have been rejected, that is, I don't know if that's. I mean, I just recently read a book, and who like science like research on that, on sort of brain regions and sort of how we perceive it as sort of social pain of rejection. And that's discussed most about sort of the perception of having been rejected. the social pain of that. And but I've always found, I don't know, I guess I can't, but I usually found that as the less complicated part. I think, I don't know, and I don't know if I differ from other people in that. But I think, I mean, it's more of a sort of the anticipating of social rejection is probably more problematic. I don't know. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong about this for the general population or for myself, but my instinct is that most, either just me or most people, the difficult part is before, because afterwards, if someone sort of have a rejection approach, you can. For me, it just I just I don't say that I react this way, but instinctively it feels as if it's that sort of something that you could just laugh away. It's like it's so pass. It's so I guess it's so pass. It's so distinct that if you allow it to sort of burn your emotional feelings, maybe I don't even know. Like it's almost as if it's a good test or a good training in sort of keeping your self-worth, your perception of your self-worth. I don't know how to put it really, um, but it's and I have a hard time come on, sort of remember like different examples, because I guess there are many things instances that we deal with this stuff. And I always think we deal sort of with dynamics of it. We get hints sort of, and we even understand when some people give hints, and we understand that if the hint, depending on the hint, is well intentioned or not, and we see that, and we also know. I think that's a good reminder that some people play on this, and that's a good reminder. And I think I guess the same approach it is fruitful there. It's just laugh it off, and understand how sad it is that some people behave that way. But yeah, anyway, but that's but it's, I think it's sort of it's always there. I mean, we all are sort of reading people all the time, sort of seeing who's sort of interacting, we do perhaps consciously, and a lot of it just unconsciously. So it is sort of deep at this sort of social rejection regions, so to speak, in the range of the perception of it is, I think, present quite often unconsciously, and we feel it. And I also think it's connected to this sort of self-worth and how you portray yourself. So marketing, whatever you call it, dark, strange videos. uh, but yeah, so, and it's, yeah, it's just associated to fears, things that limit many people. I think it's true, this sort of that fear is the thing that limits many people in many instances in life. It's hard to know when it's an excuse to do something else, when it's not. And oh yeah, um, risk taking, and yeah, there are many topics you could delve deep into in this sort of confidence. Because I mean, on the other hand, it's not only that people are sort of overly afraid of stuff and just testing things. It's also that people are sort of over optimistic and are they are sort of have excessive self regard, as Charlemagne, uh, that was his term for it. I don't know if he's sort of just meant sort of pure narcissism or just over optimism, because he used this over optimism as another bias. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's so it's like it's not so easy to say just okay, we should just be careless and be less afraid and just go bananas, because it's also the case that we're often perhaps over optimistic, and so still be prudent and being perfectionistic about the work and your own work. That's always going to be no way around that. So, and that's a hard balance. I guess that's why few people sort of succeed really like on a big level, perhaps, so to speak. It's hard to navigate both, because I really think it's quite a sort, and I think school is partly responsible for this, but perhaps it's just in the natural for the human brain to be like that. If you're super picky and super prudent and super perfectionistic and super conscientious, like the big five traits, and to also be sort of extremely open into risk taking, and not just only risk taking, but sort of how should you put it? Because they're extremely analytical, sort of prudent. Often, for me, comes off as the one who does not just do, how should you put it, grand stuff. I don't know. It's sort of in my brain, sort of as opposite skills, which is perhaps, by the way, why Peter Thiel names sort of entrepreneurs, really high achieving entrepreneurs, really unique people, as being sort of, if you have the, what's it called, this famous curve, when it's sort of, if it's IQ, for example, it's 100 IQ, and here it's like 85 IQ, and here it's I don't know, 125, so it's rarer on the other side. Like, it's always like, and really high achieving entrepreneurs are like having skills on both the extremes at the normal distribution curve. That's the name, I guess, or Gauss. Isn't that Gauss curve? Gauss, normal distribution in a way. So that's sort of, they have a sort of an unintuitive both characteristics on that curve. It's not that they is one way on the other as an extreme of an extreme entrepreneur. It's as if they have both for some weird reason, that they can have both. And I guess it's the same thing about really rare high achievers in general, that they could both be the extremely prudent, perfectionistic sort of, and in Peter Thiel's, if I remember correctly, words like super, what's it called? Autistic, like super autistic, and as well super social for some weird reason. They can sort of be both. They're on the extremes, but on not only on the extremes on one side of the distribution, but on the both. That's how I remember from his book, at least he described it. And that's quite interesting, because it seems as if that's the case also with sort of, yeah, high achieving people who can both be extremely analytical, perfectionistic, sort of always sort of prudent, just thinking, and it's always as if you go into never doing, and you have the other extreme of just, okay, so how do I can I connect that to the discussion about our both, not just, we have to be careful about our optimism and sort of narcissistic being, and the discussion of not being too afraid all the time and just do stuff. Yeah, I don't know. perhaps not today. I think there's something there to delve deeper into. Um, but just by the way, sort of rationally evaluating decisions on a daily basis in life. I mean, I think it's true for all of us that hmm, that's perhaps good advice. Speaking on the Peter Thiel book, I think my favorite chapter in 0 to 1 his book is probably at least the one that I remember, and I just like the general thought of it, the concept. Secrets. You call it, I think it was 7 or 8, chapter 7 or 8. It's just called Secrets, and we lost the sort of thought of that, thinking about secrets in the world. That's something that's lost, and we have to do that, to believe there is things that we be discovering and so forth. I won't go into his whole philosophy and all his thoughts, but it where I go with this now again? I forgot what I was going to say. Now I've completely lost it. But it was something about this sort of secret. It was super interesting. Why did I lost my train of thought? I talked about. I was not sure I was going to connect all the dots here about the being sort of overly afraid, but also over optimistic, and the extremes of stuff, and the of having very super social and super sort of into yourself, and conflicting traits, so to speak. And damn, I forgot completely, and it's irritating because this was something that was so interesting. This sort of secret, which I, by the way, think is I really agree with. I think it's a good. I guess I just thought about it as a very good general outlook on your sort of own life, and just, but this is just a paraphrasing is that chapter, but maybe I'll figure out why I come to think about that in connection to this earlier discussion. But yeah, to not lose the sense of that there are secrets to be found, new things to discover. Yeah, we might not find a new continent on Earth. We might not find out that the, I think what's is it alchemy, the English word? Yeah, that the alchemy ended up in sort of chemistry and all those sort of mysteries to solve. But for that person who think, well, damn, that's really bad. We live in times where there are no secrets. One thing to contemplate is the want to be feel wonder again. You can just think about where there's something rather than anything. Why we have a consciousness, because that's something that if it does not inspire some wonder and some sort of just sort of both humility and or just appreciation of the mystery. Mystery is a good word. Mystery of the secrets of existence. But also then just as that, perhaps just a gateway to the appreciation of what is the secrets in your environment that you're not understand. Oh, now I get it. Yes, now I remember. I think on any whatever level you're at, I think in any topic, whatever you try to achieve, I think it's a good constructor and just sort of an humility, sort of and a sort of a way to push yourself perhaps is to realize there is always a solution that is just completely in front of you, or perhaps not completely in front of you, but there's something that a much smarter brain would notice about your life that's sort of perhaps super obvious just for other people, plus you have a blind spot, or just super, if you just knew it, it would be a like, oh gosh, I wasted hours, days, month, weeks, month, years, decades, perhaps in worst case. That's perhaps like, quite sad, I guess. But I mean, just that small thing would have just solved everything for you. Or not everything, but just have an immense of sort of impact on your. And that's perhaps a good way. That's why I started to think about secrets, because I think it's a good sort of way to push, because we're all sort of dumb, I guess. And I that's how I started to getting into this, that we're all navigating our lives on a daily basis, and we're never really sure about how good we were doing that. We all have our strengths and weaknesses and doubts and the days of feeling of some level of triumph, perhaps, hopefully, at times. And but we're all sort of making big mistakes all the time. And I think that's a good reminder to zoom out to sort of say, well, I probably did immense mistakes today. I have no idea what it was. But a secret to be found, which are there somewhere. Those secrets does exist. That is the secrets of just finding that down thing that you did again, a thought again, for the hundredth of the hundredth of thousandth of time, you thought and did that again, and you never discovered what the secret was, what the other approach should be in just that instance. That's probably a good way to sort of open up the brain, I guess. I'm impressed with my own ideas today. At times, this was probably top. Yeah, perhaps I should have preserved the heritage of. Uh, Speaking whether we were grand words here, but it's preserve the heritage of my father's words of just ending at the peak time. So yeah, I think I'm ending here. It's perhaps a good thought to sleep on, to to remember what secrets that you could have found today that would be revolutionary for you, but you just happen to not be looking at the right, under the right tree, on the right stone, or the right. Yeah, I guess trying to throw in a metaphor there, but yeah, I think the point gets across.